So, and then as I grew up, witnessing the block parties going on in the the park in the back of my projects. This is outdoor block parties. And then to see that later in hip hop would adopt that record and that beat. I was automatically like, when I get me some equipment, like that's what I want to use. And it just so happens that Big Daddy Kane, Another Victory, was the first official commercial production of mine out the gate. Before that, I had primarily before that I was working out with Rapping is Fundamental, and we had put out like an independent release or two. But Big Daddy Kane was what you would call the arrival, and Booker T and the MGs. Melting Pot was that's the first iconic sample that I used. So it's just crazy that you picked that one. You started from jump, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's what we do. Chronological order. I try and find the very first official placement, and then we just go from there. So yeah. Also, I've read that this is interesting that you sampled the Ain't No Half Stepping from Big Daddy Kane's first album, because that was produced by Marley Marl. And I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Oh, you could tell I was gonna say something.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, because I'm definitely not one to try to take people's credit. Um, Marley Marl is a huge mentor to me. Not like he put his hand on my hand and said, "You got to do it like this." No, but I studied him profusely. Like he is to me the pioneer of creative sampling. Now he's not the creator of sampling, because before that you had uh from over your way, Trevor Horn
Ah,
with world famous Supreme Team, Art of Noise. Um and then a lot of people don't know Trevor Horn is responsible for one of the first samples ever on a record, and it didn't even happen on a hip hop record. It happened on a rock record. Do you know what that record is?
I have no idea.
Owner of a Lonely Heart by Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out.
Hmm.
Straight out the gate, I'm getting education.
I'm not gonna say the sample. Just people go and listen. And like that was like what 80? What year was Owner of a Lonely Heart? I think that was 82 or 83. And after he did Yes, that's when he took the sampling and started experimenting with Art of Noise, and slightly before that, world famous Supreme Team. So yeah, just a bit of trivia.
I love a bit of trivia. That's what this song plan is all about, trivia, man. And obviously education about the stories behind the song. So I appreciate that. So, because what I was going to ask you was, what was it particular about Marley Marl that drew you to, like, that made you interest in his music? But then you said and from what I gather from your answer, that he was the first to be creative with sampling, as opposed to, I guess, so when you say creative with sampling, what are you contrasting that with? I guess,
Yeah.
do you mean simple loops, or what do you mean by that?
Okay, I'll use Trevor Horn to lead into that. Trevor Horn was just basically doing like hits, but Marley, he took it a step further. He would go to like Impeach the President by the Honey Drippers, and the beginning drum break that goes, and he took the kick, and then he comes up with cha 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 cha
Oh
cha cha,
wow.
the bridge, the bridge, the bridge, MC Shan, and the wow, 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 wow. He's got the sample like rolling backwards. I was like, oh my goodness, what does he have? I gotta go get that machine. Just that it's just and what's crazy when Marley came out and started using the SP1200 is sitting right over here. Matter of fact, shout to Rossum, Dave Rossum, one of the owners of Formula Emu that made the SP1200. Um, he took Marley took the SP1200 and basically turned it into um, a place where you can throw your own band in there, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
What's crazy is before Marley started using this machine and whatever he was using before that, because I had talks with him and he told me he did not start with the SP1200. He was triggering with other machines and it's just crazy. But way before he did that, I remember I was like 14 years old, really young, 13, 14 years old. And I sat around and I used, when hip hop first started to happen, I dreamed, I said, I wish they could make a machine where I could take this kick from one record, this snare from one record, take a piece of bass from another record, some horns or whatever, and put it into the machine and jumble them and play something brand new. And they made that machine, and it was the Emu SP1200. And then come to find out later, Marley Marl was using that machine. Boogie Down Productions, shout to Said G of Ultramagnetic, who was doing a lot of the production, early production for Boogie Down Productions. The Bridge is Over. Um, what else? Just like that whole Criminal Minded album, if you go back and you listen. And then Said G went on to start doing his own production with his own group, Ultramagnetics. Then much later, you have some of the most non-celebrated, one of the most non-celebrated producers that popped up a minute later, Paul C.
Hmm.
And he was using the machine. I was just like, you know what? This hip hop explosion is going on. And the dream in my mind for the kind of machine that I wish that they would create, they made it. So it was my mission to go out and buy this machine and emulate what my heroes were doing. Marley Marl and Said G. And rest in peace, salute to Paul C. because he is one of the most non-celebrated producers. I've heard that actually Large Professor told me that Paul C mentored him.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, Bink told me about Paul C. Yeah, we had a conversation about him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So this sampling thing is just a wonderful thing, man. It's just beautiful how, as a kid, I sat around and I dreamed and I wished that they would make a machine like that, and then they did, and it's been evolving ever since from the SP1200 to the MPC. Much later, things like Machine. Now you got DAWs, digital audio workstations, and man, I'm just so glad that the dream came true in my mind. What I wanted to do with records, I was actually able to execute.
So by the time you produce your first single for Big Daddy Kane, I'm assuming you had the SP1200 at that point, right?
No, I actually didn't. What's
Oh.
crazy? Yeah, what's crazy is another victory, and then Calling Mr. Welfare, which was the second record on the Big Daddy Kane's it's a Big Daddy Thing album that I produced. Those two songs bought my SP1200. When I got that check, I ran so quick and bought that machine. But the way that we made another victory and call him Mr. Welfare, believe it or not, that whole album was made. The sampling was done on a synclavier. I used to always mispronounce that keyboard. I used to call it synclavier, but I learned all these years I've been saying it wrong. It's synclavier, Synclavier. And at that time, that and like the Fairlight synthesizer and what Trevor Horn, I heard that he was using the emulator. Um, those machines, they were like financially out of our reach. You know, you're a young kid in the ghetto, you can't afford a synclavier, a Fairlight machine. And I'd heard that the synclavier and the Fairlight cost anywhere from what, $10,000 to $20,000
Oh
back
wow.
then, something like that. We're an average kid from the ghetto. We couldn't afford that. So you have to understand, when the SP1200 entered the game, that's when all us ghetto kids was like, yeah, now I can afford it. It's like the SP1200 was like a ghetto version of a ghetto man's Fairlight, a Synclavier.
Can I ask you a question? So, in regards to Fairlight and Saint Clavier, right? I'm assuming I'm pronouncing it right. Is that, does that have anything to do with pulse tapes, or was that completely separate thing?
What I was getting at is, I don't know if you missed it earlier, because I got off into that other story, but the whole Big Daddy Kane, it's a Big Daddy Thing album. That album, the sampling on it was done with a synclavier. So you asked me, did I have my equipment yet? No. I went to the studio. The studio back then at that time was oh man, what is the studio that we used? It was in Astoria, Queens. Libra Digital was the name of the studio. Shouts to, if they even still alive, Tony A and Tony P, the engineers. So Kane booked the session. The records that I was going to use, I brought them to the studio. I didn't know what I was walking into. I thought that when I got there that they would have an SP1200. But you there?
Yeah, I'm here. EJ, I think you're off mute. Could you mute, please?
Yeah, your screen just blinked out real quick. But
Yeah,
anyway, I brought
because
my records to the studio, and when I got there, there was this Synclavier, big long 88 key joint. And Kane pointed to that and he said, that's what we're gonna sample. And I was like, what? So this right here also gets into the question or the definition of what is production. Because I brought my records. I don't know how to operate that synclavier. So what I did was I played the records. I pointed out the spots that I wanted to sample, and I was telling the engineer, yeah, start it right there. And yeah, loop that. And so he did it for me. Now, the record says produced by Easy Mo B, but that's a good question. That's a question that arises constantly today. If you didn't actually operate the equipment,
mm,
do you get the legitimate credit as a producer? Yeah, because it was your ideas, it was your concept. If you put that record in front of that engineer, he might not know or might not go to and pick the exact same spot that you would pick. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's just like if you give both of us a record, me and you'll probably take one part and do something, and I'll take another part and do something else. So I kind of was being schooled in the beginning, like what production is, and that's a question that still arises today. So, did I have my hands on the machine? Did I operate the machines when I did Another Victory and Call Him Mr. Welfare? No, I told the engineer um, what I wanted and how I wanted it. And early on, people don't realize it, but that was the start of Big Daddy Kane as a producer, also too,
Oh wow.
because I sat there right in that same studio and I watched Big Daddy Kane do his own producing. People don't know to this day, but Warm It Up Kane and the A side of that, Smooth Operator, um, he produced those records
Oh wow.
just like I did. I watched him sit there and he was like, oh, yeah, yeah, chop it from there, right there. And then when it gets to the hook, he's like, yeah. And when it get to the hook, I want you to put that. Because I'm a smooth operator. I was like, wow. So this is what production is. And you take it a step even further when you buy and you acquire the machines and you actually tap out and do the work yourself is what I evolved into. After that first check, I ran down to Sam Ash on 48th Street in Manhattan, bought that machine so quick because it's cool to tell the engineer or to tell somebody what you want, but nothing is better than you executing it yourself. You tapping it out and you doing the work. This way you get the maximum of the vision that you see in your head, what you hear
Yeah.
in your head.
No, of course. I can imagine. Now, I just want to
Like,
speak quick.
I'm sorry, let me inject. And this always comes up as one of the biggest examples, but like Quincy Jones.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, yeah.
Quincy Jones can play instruments, but when he did Back on the Block, when he produced Rufus and Chaka Khan's Master Jam and his album The Dude, Walking in Space, and all of those albums that he had back in the days, he directed the musicians and told them exactly what he wanted. You know, he's got George Benson over there on guitar. He's got Louis Johnson from the Brothers Johnson playing bass. He's telling Patty Austin and James Ingram and Michael Jackson, yeah, I want you to do this on the backgrounds and give me a little ooh. So, yeah,
I completely agree because, like I said, well, didn't say it, but what I was gonna say is people always use Quincy Jones as that example because often, like on my page, I might have put a certain producer. He might have spoke about how he wasn't hands on the beat. Then you have someone in the comments saying, "Oh, so how is he a producer?" But then hold on, Quincy Jones, one of the greatest producers of all time, like you said, he was directing it. He wasn't hands on. So yeah, I think people confuse beat making as being the equivalent as producing, and they're not synonymous. Like like
you're
like
right.
you've like you've
You're right.
explained.
Beat making. You are right. Beat making and are two totally different things.
No, for sure. And
There are only a few of us out here, not a few, but there are only a select amount of us that actually do both.
that's a fact.